Hey, welcome back, everyone. This is Ira Wolf. Let me make sure we get our pictures here. Let me hide this so you can see our faces. There we go. So get all the technology working. Ed Samuel, welcome to the Crazy Shift Show.
Hey, Ira, how are you doing?
Our live streaming. Yeah, absolutely. And certainly a lot of crazy shift going on this morning or this afternoon with this. So just a little bit of background for everyone. I'm Ira Wolf, Success Performance Solutions, recruiting in the age of Googleization. And this is, I don't know, maybe my 10th live stream, second one today. Had another one this morning about staffing, global staffing. Catch that one with Bill Keller. And but Ed contacted me. I don't remember how we contacted. It might have been on LinkedIn, somehow. And you got a new book. I think I got a copy here. See if everybody can see it. Optimize your resume. And this is something that I help people. I offer to review their resumes, but I really don't do it. It's not my full-time job. And so I know enough to be dangerous. But Ed, you've been doing this a long, long time. And I can't tell you how many times, people are reaching out to me to say, listen, we've contacted 50 people, 100 people, companies, and we're just not getting recognized. Some of that, maybe maybe the resume. An issue that I definitely want to talk to you this afternoon about is how do you get them? How do you get your resume to kind of get through the ATS, the technology? We had that, but a lot to talk about. Amazing, you got a pretty thick book here of lots of tips. It's loaded. So tell us a little bit about who you are, how you came to the point of writing a book on optimizing your resume.
Well, I'm a career coach, and we've been doing this for about 10 years now. And, over the years, resumes continue to, I've looked and reviewed 1,000 resumes and worked with many, many clients. And I was a recruiter for about 5 years prior to becoming a career coach and starting my own practice. And one of the things that became clear to me was that there's a great deal of people I'll never touch, and they need help. And some people can't hire a career coach. Some people, literally, we can only touch so many people a year. Right. And I decided to write the book really to help a larger group of people with their resumes. And, in the book, I actually talk about, some of our own statistics that we keep. And I would contend that about 90% of the resumes that come across our desk have to be modified fairly significantly. And about 75% have to be written completely from scratch. So it's startling in terms of people being challenged, whether these are college graduates not knowing what to do coming out of school, or somebody who's going into their second or third version of their career and they're 50 or 60 years old, and everything in between. So we did it really to touch a lot of lives, Ira.
So what are some of the most common mistakes that you see? Whether it's somebody coming out of school or I guess I'm pitched most often by people that are probably in their late 40s. I want to say late 40s, maybe 50s, maybe even early 60s. It's, hey, I've applied to all these jobs. I wonder if ageism is being impacted. So what are some of the common mistakes? And then maybe a second question off that is if I've had a 30 or 40 year career and I've listed a lot of great experiences, it may give away my age.
Yeah, we could do a whole show just on the age.
We got part of a show here. So.
Yeah, exactly. But let me say, here are some of the big issues. So one is people love to mix accomplishments and responsibilities together. It's probably the number one issue So when people are reading a resume, the first page I'm reading it, or people are reading it, and well, this is what I was responsible for. This is what I did. This is what I did. But it's reads more like a job description. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to get value from a job description because everybody has one. And it really hurts you from a competitive standpoint. I'm a big believer, and I wrote chapter 6 in the book was really focused on how do you really call out and quantify an accomplishment. And I actually list 26 different questions you need to ask yourself to draw out that value proposition. So that would be one of the big ones.
Yes. So let me just stop you there for a second.
Sure.
What would be one or two questions that are on that list of 26?
Well, this may sound really simple, but I'll be working with a salesperson, and they just finished a 10-year run, and the first question that I have is that, well, in those 10 years, what was the top line revenue, the sales number that you brought in? It gets real basic, and it's like, why is it missing? So you brought in $100 million and you're not listing it. And it's like, well, and then it's kind of like, well, another question is, what did you do to improve productivity? And if you improve productivity, what percentage did you improve it by? If you're a CFO, what did you do to reduce costs? And give me an example or two of something that you did that's tangible. If you're a marketing person, how did you grow market share? From the time you started the job to the time you left, what percent market share did you garner? How many new products did you put out? So there are certain words that I say are forbidden in a resume, like a few, some, many. I delivered multiple products, right? Quantify it. So people, and my argument is that most people will minimize you, they will not maximize you. So if they see multiple, oh, they must have done just a couple. I've talked to people many, many times where multiple means, oh, well, I did a couple thousand a year. Well, that's very different than multiple, right? So that's an example.
Yeah, excellent. So let's go to, and again, this came up over the weekend. There was, and I put this on LinkedIn, so this is public. Anybody can get this information. And we had I think I'm up to maybe 3,000 views already, and it was a really good active discussion. But one of the things that came up was there was an opportunity for an adjunct professor at one of the local colleges, and it really intrigued me. So I submitted my resume and went through one of the most popular. I won't give the name, but one of the most popular ATS. And I uploaded my resume. It was a doc. It was text oriented. I don't know if it's written the best, but I don't know if it would meet your criteria. But I submitted it. But that wasn't the problem. The problem is that it did give me an opportunity to review how it was uploaded and imported into all the fields, and it was really horrible. It was really bad. So there was a lot of misplaced information. Now I know a lot of the technology that's out there does not. One is it doesn't parse them correctly. The other part was it doesn't always give the candidate an opportunity to review that. So two sides came to this. We know the technology is not up to par. There are some good parsing technologies. None are perfect, but a lot of the HR tech does not use that technology. Use the best. Some of them are homegrown. Some of it doesn't allow you to check. So that's the one. So you can't fix that. But what you can do is optimize. I assume you can optimize your resume so that it's got the best chance of getting loaded correctly into the HR technology. And the only reason I'm bringing this up is because so many companies are relying on HR technology. Fortunately for me, that's part of my business. But there's definitely a need for improvement. But what presented to me over the weekend of just how poor many of those platforms are at parsing that, which really puts the candidate at a significant disadvantage. So two questions. One is, am I correct? Was it just my opinion and it just happened to me? And second is, how can you help someone, or what are some of the tips that you can give to a candidate to say these, to get your best chance of being parsed correctly, being inputted into the information, what can they do?
Sure. So you are absolutely correct. There's a lot of systems out there now that will, people might get a couple hundred resumes, and then that system's going to spit out based on keywords, based on what you've put on that piece of paper, a stack over here, and then that stack gets looked at, and you may not even come out the other end. There were some ATS systems, some that I know very, very well, that it says upload the resume, and then you basically have to retype in the entire resume as word for word almost, and cut and paste the entire resume, and it kind of defeats the whole purpose of uploading it. And I know a lot of my clients get incredibly frustrated over having to go through that process. Yeah. Now, I wrote my book in a little bit different slant, and I'll come back to your ATS question. I wrote the book based on a resume that if you were going to present your resume to a hiring manager at a company, what would that resume look like? There is no job description. What would be the best representation of you to a particular hiring manager to have a discussion? And that resume is what's in my book, and that's what I would want to see sent. Now, what we'll do with our clients, though, we'll take that particular resume, and then we'll from a formatting standpoint, we'll turn it into a blank. We'll reformat it to a dumbed down text resume, so that things like bullets and things, lines, all that goes away, so that when you go to upload the resume, you're not having all kinds of problems because of something related to formatting. The second piece of this is that there's several tools that are out there that my clients will use. One of them that you may have heard of is called JobScan. JobScan is a tool. You have to, I think they give you a few free freebies on it, and then you have to pay for it. And
I just want to put that up for everybody. That's JOBS scan, SCAN.
JobScan. And JobScan is it's a pretty good tool, and a lot of the outplacement firms, in fact, even recommend it or use it. And you'll actually run your resume through it, and it'll come up to where it scores. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take the job description that's posted by the employer and cut and paste it into one side, and you're going to upload your resume into the other side. And then their program kind of does what an ATS system's trying to do, which is match the two together. And you want to get a score near 80%. And depending on the ATS systems, you have to be careful, because if you try to make everything identical and it comes out to like a 95% hit rate, it would also reject. Because so I recommend, if you get to 80%, that's pretty good, and you stand a chance. And you may have to move some of the keywords around. Sometimes I saw a resume go through an ATS and it hit 60%. And all they did is they changed 2 words, replaced 2 keywords, and it went from 65% to 80%. So it doesn't have to be a whole rewrite. It could be driven off of some of the most important words that employers are looking for.
So that brings up an interesting question. So is looking at the responsibilities, looking at the job listing, and then responding to that. But a lot of people I know have one resume. I mean, they basically, whether it's professionally done, whether they've written it, but they basically have one resume, and even though it's a similar job title, they submit the same one to everyone. Or they've uploaded it into a system, and then it's very easy to just, click that it's already there. Are you suggesting that the resume or that they should be adjusted per job submission?
Yeah, but what I don't recommend is spending hours, and quite honestly, there are people that have spent days and days and days, in a week trying to get this adjustment through the ATS system. So when we start focusing all our energy on the ATS system and trying to get it right, what happens is that you're taking the way from networking and getting yourself into those companies and talking to hiring managers and a much more higher rate of return in that type of an investment. So you got to be careful that you don't adjust. Yeah, and I know people who have 30 different versions of their resumes, it's not something I necessarily support because there's a larger concern. The concern is you need to shift your time as a career coach, doing more networking, less submitting job applications. And for the ones that you do submit, I guess my feedback would be just go after those jobs where you hit the minimum qualifications. And if you hit the minimum qualifications, there's a higher chance you're going to get through the ATS system. But there's certainly much more to that than just getting that job application submitted. You got to go knock on doors and you got to leverage your network. So
let me go back to the other part of the question. And you said we can talk for hours on this, and I'm sure we can. And we have just about 14 minutes or so. Not the world. We don't go off the air, but I try to keep these just for people's attention span within about 30 minutes or so. So I would say that over the last 5 years, the most of the people that approach me, it seems that younger people will submit a resume and, hey, if I'm hiring or if I know of anybody, but that 50 and older crowd, maybe because I'm one of them, basically comes up and says, I'm really having a tough time. Do you have any recommendations what I can do with my resume, or how can I get past this? So are any rules of thumb? I know every situation is a little different, and sometimes people just have to develop new skill sets. I mean, there's a lot of people that have 30 years of experience, but the experience isn't needed. That experience just isn't needed anymore.
Yeah.
So what somebody that's in their 50s, whether they're starting a new career, whether they've been outsourced, terminated, fired, company goes out of business, they've been acquired, they're out in the market, haven't done this for years and years and years, never thought they'd have to do it. What are some of the, I guess, big mistakes that they're making on their resume beyond that, hey, list your achievements?
Sure. Well, where do I start? Here's the first one. The first one, there are some people out there that believe you should hide your age. And what happens is that there's actually one organization that's actually promoting you should only show 15 years on your resume.
Yeah, I've seen that one.
And then what happens is that, you're the hiring manager, you look at the resume and it says, wow, you went to college, and right out of college, you became the vice president of product development. That's amazing. And then as soon as they ask the question, well, what did you do? Did you do anything prior to that? Oh, well, I worked for this company and I worked for that company and I worked for that. And then what happens is that you have an integrity issue right out of the gate. And it's like, well, why are you lying about hiding? What are you hiding? What happens now is that what we start to do, because we have this concern about age, you create another problem for yourself, which is, well, you're hiding something. What else are you hiding from me? And all of this is negative. There's nothing positive going on here. Now, you might get your foot in the door, but I'm going to go back to something more fundamental. This is what I coach people on. If, and I have a lot of candidates, a lot of clients that are 55, 60, 70, 75, literally, right? But what I tell them all is that when you go into the job market, 50% of the job market will have a bias against you. And it doesn't matter what your resume looks like. They're not going to hire you no matter what. No matter what. So what happens is you have to work twice as hard to get the people, hiring managers, decision makers that will value that experience and know that because of your battle scars, you'll get it done faster and then the 30-year-old or even the 45 or 50-year-old. You'll get it done faster. Now, if your resume doesn't reflect it, that's a problem, because then what's happening is you get two pieces of paper, they look the same. They're always going to err to the younger person if it looks the same. Therefore, for an older person with more experience, your value proposition better be stronger. Now, one other factor in all this is so let's say you're the 50%, you get to the right person, okay, you're going to compete. Now you really have to compete. It's not just the resume. Have you kept your skills sharp? What does your LinkedIn page look like? When's the last time you attended a professional development seminar? Are you doing any kind of volunteer work? Talk to me about something that you've done most recently that brings you to the cutting edge versus the lagging edge. And those are the types of things that you have to really work on. And for those people that I work with who can do those things, they do better fundamentally than those people. And the other thing is you got to, this is something else that's a challenge. I would say more so for men than women, but you got to leave the swagger, back at the house. Because when you're competing in this market, like I'm explaining right now, the swagger means nothing. You don't want to shave, you don't want to have a nice haircut, your shoes aren't shined. You think just because you've done an awful lot in your career, the person who's interviewing you knows that. They don't understand any of that. The other thing you got to be careful of is you can't talk down to people. That's another challenge. Not that people do it on purpose, by the way, but there will be certain questions asked by people who are 35, 38, 40. They're interviewing you. You have more life experience than them. You have more experience. Sometimes they're asking questions that make no sense. You got to be careful that you don't embarrass or try to put the interviewer in their place. That's another common mistake. You got to have to kind of suck it up a little bit and be careful in terms of how you do it. So there's a lot of factors that go into somebody who hits 50, 55, 60, and yet this is hard work. And you can't, but to think that the age bias doesn't exist, that's crazy. It does exist. It's just a matter of competing.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question that it exists. And, that's a great point because I have seen the same recommendations because I've got, I've got nearly 4 decades of experience out there. And if I was applying for a job, not necessarily an adjunct, but if I was applying for a position in a company, someone can easily see that. So even though I don't have dates on when I graduated college or high school, people can, rapidly figure out. So otherwise, it looked like I couldn't hold the job down.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is that if you're 65, I have a couple of people who are 65 that are clients. What you have to really be careful of is what you don't say in an interview could be way more damaging than what you do say in an interview. So if you go to an interview and you're 65, if you don't absolutely look at the interviewer and say, hey, my health is great. My wife and I have no plans to retire. We love what we do. I'm looking to work another 10 years and I'm sharp and I've stayed sharp. And here are some of the training that I'm going. You have to plant a seed to somebody that's what your real commitment is. You have to speak from the heart, and they got to see it in your eyes, because if they don't, why the heck are they going to hire you at a higher salary so you can retire in a couple of years at 68?
Right. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I mean, and that goes for anything. Is if there's an issue, I mean, it's really a sales tactic. If you know that there's an issue, bring it out up front. If there's a concern, listen, I know you don't like working with a small business. I know you don't like working, that you're normally work with minority businesses. Whatever it might be, is bring that out front and address it. Because
Absolutely.
if you just lay it behind there, it's going to come to roost, and then you really don't know what it is. But I guess it's the old thing. Honesty is the best.
But let me share one other point though. But here's a great strength. A great strength, though, that an older person does bring to the table, though, is, hey, I'm looking to work another 10 years. And if they believe you and you're at a point in your life where, yep, you're going to work another 10 years, you're not positioning yourself to be the CFO or the CEO, or titles become less important. And if they believe you, guess what? You become a really valuable person, because the millennials today are leaving the job after 2.5 years to 4.5 years, depending on which study you look at. They're not keeping them. But an older person with this kind of experience, that's a plus.
Yeah, they're not looking. Yeah, especially if they can get this position, it's not likely that that years they're gonna decide they're gonna job hop and look for another growth opportunity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. There was a question. I got to kind of think through this again, because we talked about leaving. Oh, I know what it was. So one of the challenges is that, hey, I've worked for this company. It shows my growth. I've got all these steps, but it basically gives a pattern away that I'm at least in my 50s, if not 60s. The other is because of the last 10, 15 years, pretty tumultuous in the labor markets, mergers, acquisitions, recessions, people have had to switch jobs. They've had to change jobs. So now you get this. Now it looks like, oh, you can't hold down a job. You're job hopping, or that you took a step down. You used to be a VP. Now you're just a manager or a supervisor. Any tips on, other than being honest, are there any tips on the resume construction of how to get that across?
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of functional resumes. Most people, when who get interviewed or who's interviewing candidates, they want to know your story. Ira, they want to know your story. They don't want to know you're good at these 5 things. They want to know, where did you come from? Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? Where did you cut your teeth? Where did you get your scars? How did you grow in your career? And unfortunately, hey, here's my advice. My advice is, if you're targeting certain people to go work for certain companies, the people who have similar battle scars that are leading those functions that you might be working for are more likely to embrace that kind of resume than the ones who went to school, they went to a public accounting firm, they worked for one company, they've only had 2 jobs their whole life. Life is simple, right? Mm-hmm. And then here's somebody else who goes to work for private equity, and they have 8 different jobs in the span of 30 years.
Oh, absolutely.
I would argue that if you submitted that resume to somebody who also worked in private equity, they would be more understanding versus someone else who thinks, well, what's your problem? You
right.
could keep a job, but that's because they have no idea how private equity works, right? So some of your answer is try to target people that are going to appreciate the ups and downs versus targeting people who think life is just simple. You go work, you go to school, you work for one company, and that's how simple life should be. Well, that's just not the reality.
So again, we're talking. I'm talking with Ed Samuel, and got the book here. There it is. So you can get that up on Amazon. If anyone wants to get in touch with you, Ed, has a question. We didn't get many questions on here, but you typically, I find on my live streams, it's not during the live part, it's afterwards. It happened this morning. It was like minutes later, somebody asked the question who I knew was online. So if there's any opportunities to reach out to you beyond the book, how do they get in touch with you?
You just go to our website, which is www.samnova.com, SamNovaInc.com, or call us our main line, which is 610-274-8214. Again, 610-274-8214. And I'm on LinkedIn. Just put down Ed Samuel Career Coach. I should be on the first page of Google. And you'll see SamNova. And for anybody listening, if you're not connected to me, please connect with me. I have 22,000 direct connections. And if I can't do anything, I'll be able to help expand your network.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an important part, because I like what you said earlier. People submit a resume, and I guess this is maybe one final question for you. How often, how quickly, what's the process you recommend for people following up once they submit that resume? Should they contact the company manager? What's the next step other than just clicking upload and crossing your fingers?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of, I've had one person recently was out of work for 3 months, applied for 380 positions.
I think I know that person.
Zero interviews, right? And then you start targeting firms, and you start building relationships outside of those But once you apply for a job, if you're really targeting that firm, not 380 firms, but that firm,
Right.
use your network to get inside that company, to knock on doors, to get you looked at. Because your resume, chances are, it's in a pile of paper with an HR person, an internal recruiter, or some type of recruiter, and it's never even going to get to the hiring manager. So you have to go kind of make it happen, take the bull by the horns, and that's really my advice.
Yeah, and that's great advice. And again, some of the I say that facetiously, but maybe it was the same person. But I know I hear this story over and over again of people submitting a couple hundred resumes, and I do see them networking, but they always seem to be networking at like chamber events, which is all salespeople. So I think the value of learning how to network, and again, that's probably a whole other multiple sessions. But
it's my next book, by the way.
Oh, wonderful! So we'll wait for that. But yeah, it's a whole other subject, and but very, very important. So hey, I appreciate it very much, Ed. Make sure you kind of submit some questions. Check out SamNovaInc.com. I think I got it displayed on the screen. Hopefully that's correct. Get the book, Optimize Your Resume by Ed Samuel. And thanks very much for sharing the do's and don'ts.
Ira, thanks for having me. Keep up the great job that you do.
Hey, thanks very much.
See you. Bye-bye.